Thank you. Chuck is always a hard act to follow, but I'm kind of glad that he was right after lunch and I'm the next guy. I would like to thank Coleman Center for inviting me here to speak in front of you, so many fellow entrepreneurs. It's indeed an honor. When they called me and asked me to talk about breakthrough moments, I really thought through it for a while, and like Chuck, I really don't have this one breakthrough moment that I could really talk about. So I had my normal top 10 list, and I'm going to talk about 3 of them in front of you. As Winston Churchill once said, success is the ability to go from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. And I've definitely done my rounds of that without losing my enthusiasm. So what typically happened when I came across this breakthrough moment was I made some mistake, did a bunch of soul searching, and then I realized this is something I really need to remember the next time. So let me first define what a breakthrough moment for me is. It's that moment of clarity. It's a defining moment which gives you real wisdom, and the wisdom that can really change your life in some ways. And you wish you had gotten that wisdom earlier and probably cheaper. So as I mentioned earlier, I have had many of these breakthroughs, and I'm going to talk about 3 of them in front of you. The first one is, in 1993, I got a divorce. So life had been peachy until that point. I'd gotten into one of the top universities. I'd gotten a PhD in computer engineering. I had one of the best jobs in the world, I thought, at IBM. That was my first job. Things were going well. And this happens. So what it made me realize is that when you're part of a team, unless you have common goals, a marriage doesn't work. When your goals diverge, things fall apart. So I basically extrapolated that to my teams that I worked with since then. And that has been a central theme for every company that I have founded. And I have founded actually 3 companies, and every time I've been really picky about who I will work with. One of the things that I've heard investors say is that they would rather support an A team with a B idea than a B team with an A idea. I actually couldn't agree more. So being a team-oriented person, I've never really had the desire to form a company by myself and then hire other people and then grow it from there. I've always found a partner or 2 before founding a company. And people say that when you find partners, you should be looking for complementary skills and, of course, competence. I actually have a slightly different view on this. Of course, I'm not going to argue against competence. But I really like people with high integrity and energy. People that I want to go to work with every day and have fun. Good sense of humor is always a plus. So I've been very picky as to who I'll work with. One of the things I found is that if you work with smart people, they learn fast. And sooner or later, they will get out of the pigeonhole they are in, and they will deliver in areas that you previously didn't think was possible. So for me, the summary of this is that attitude overcomes skills any day. Let me just apply this to the 3 companies that I founded. My first company, Internet Junction, I knew this team. I'd worked with them. I was part of a large technical team, and we loved working with each other. And I knew one of the guys from grad school as well. This was in the Silicon Valley, early 90s, and everybody there had this desire to start a company, and the 3 or 4 of us also had a burning desire to start a company. We didn't know actually what we were going to do exactly, but we were looking for something to do. One day, one of the late-night hacking sessions, we downloaded this browser. The name of this browser was Mosaic browser from University of Illinois. And we said, wow, this is great. We should build a better browser and build one for Windows. We started our work on it. About 3 months later, a company called Netscape was founded. We looked at them and we realized that they knew a lot more about this space than we were ever going to know. They had more money than us. They had $5 million. We had nothing. And they had Jim Clark. So clearly this idea was not going to work for us. But we had a lot of faith in each other, and we knew we could make something else happen. We started working on another product. We came up with one, and eventually we launched the company, which was finally bought by Cisco Systems. My second company, I met a couple of young MBAs from University of Chicago at a TIE event, and they had an idea. Actually, they wanted to start a company. They were smart, ambitious. They had a burning desire to start a company, and they had an idea in the space of wireless web, and they'd already submitted that to the New Venture Challenge at the Chicago Graduate School of Business. I couldn't really actually understand exactly what they were trying to do, but I liked them instantly. Eventually, actually, we won. So I joined the team, and we won one of the prizes at NVC. And eventually, we built a company that had nothing whatsoever to do with that idea. But since we liked each other, we had so much trust and confidence in each other that we built another set of products over time. This company, we raised about $25 million over time, and eventually it was sold to Intel. But going to work every day was a great pleasure with these guys being there. My current company started with the vision of building IP-based businesses. My partner, Dr. Sridhar Shukla, and I were both quite influenced by this book called Built to Last. I don't know if you've read this book, but there's a book called Good to Great and Built to Last. It talks about how great companies are built. So one of the things this book says is that you don't need a great idea to start a great company. We definitely had a head start on that one. We didn't have a great idea. In fact, we didn't have any idea as to what to do. But we founded the company anyways. And I've known Sridhar since 8th grade. We've been in constant touch since, even before the days of email. We used to write letters to each other. I know it's hard to believe. But I know it's going to be a great ride. It has been a great ride for the last 7 years, and I'm sure that's going to continue. So the summary of this is, to me, the most important aspect of any startup is the team. And I'm not just talking about competence. It's the people who you want to work with every day. You have the synergy, common goals, and the energy to go with it. My second aha moment was when I heard one of the investors say that ideas are a dime a dozen. Until that point, I always believed ideas are extremely important for a company, or the one idea that the company is based on. It's the engine for the company. It's the soul of the company. When I moved to the Valley in the 90s, early 90s, the environment was such that you picked complex technology problems and you came up with solutions, and then you tried to figure out a business model to see if you could make a business out of it. I know it is hard to believe, but the web didn't exist then. And it was hard to find out what everyone else was doing. When I started my first company to take novel users to the internet with high performance and ease of use, that is the sole thing we were focusing on. We had no idea what anybody else was doing. We ran into one competitor when we saw a book published by this competitor. It was a bigger company, saying that they were solving the same problems that we did. Of course, we thought we did it better. And then the rest of the competitors we ran into when our customers told us about them. Oh, you're selling this, so-and-so was just here and he was trying to sell me this. So it was very hard to figure out what else was going on out there. And in some ways, because of this ignorance, we were able to really focus on what we were good at. The maniacal focus that Chuck talked about earlier, that just came naturally. In 2000, when I started Survega, the web was everywhere. So no matter what you did, you could find that others were doing something similar. There were a few other companies. So the focus was really on positioning. So how do you make sure that you're differentiated in the market and you position yourself properly in that? This is when I raised about $25 million for Survega, and while I was raising money, one of the investor prospects said this statement: that ideas are a dime a dozen. What he really meant was, whatever you bring to the table, he has probably heard that particular idea somewhere else, and he wants to know why that would become a good business, and if it did, why would your company succeed? So there was a lot more focus on differentiation and execution. Again, the team is extremely important for these things to work. For GS Lab, I have worked over the last 7 years with about 30 to 35 startups. Some have gone under, some are thriving, and some have been acquired by bigger companies. What we see now is that no matter what your idea is, you can find tens or hundreds of other competitors. Sometimes people that look like competitors may be doing something entirely different. But ideas today are really dime a dozen. So it's, again, extremely important to focus on execution and making sure your product is successful. Again, the summary is that while the idea is good, it is not going to remain unique for long. So you have to focus on execution. Now let me move on to the last breakthrough moment. This came when I read a book called 4 Steps to Epiphany. I wish I had read this book earlier. This book is written by, the author's name is Stephen Blank, who was either a founder or an early employee of 8 startups, 5 of which went IPO and 3 went under. So he wanted to know what is it that worked for the ones that went IPO and what went wrong with the ones that failed. So he made some observations and he checked them out with others who had had similar experience of success and failure. It turns out that many of his observations are very similar to what I've seen in my experience. So I'm going to paraphrase what he says, but here is how most companies get created, and here is how they operate. First of all, you come across some idea, you figure out a product that goes with that idea, then you create a business model. Everybody has that revenue hockey stick. Everybody goes cash flow 3 years from now, and things get fantastic 5 years from now. Then you have your marketing people working towards general availability of this product. Somewhere along the way, you hire VP of sales, who will eventually get fired. And you start getting some early customers, early beta customers. If a couple of them convert, then you start hiring more salespeople and have a revenue target, and so on. So far, so good. It turns out that even if your beta customers actually convert, you still may not have the product, the right product for the right market, at the right time and right price. So even though this is how things work, 90% of the companies actually fail. In fact, my first 2 companies did exactly this model, although they didn't quite fail, but they followed the same model. But 90% of the companies fail, and still we keep doing this. So his advice was, instead of focusing on product development, which is what all companies try to do, should be focusing on customer development. So it's almost like the day after you get your funding, you get your board together and say in a very serious tone, I have a confession to make. I have no idea if any of these assumptions I just made are actually true. I don't know if this problem I'm trying to solve, customers really care about it. I don't know if anybody is going to pay for it, and I don't know if the business is scalable. This is not going to be a pleasant conversation. Okay? So, but then instead you say, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to continue to develop some aspects of this product, especially the ones I would like to show to customers to get some validation. But what I'm really going to be focusing on is that, is my problem formulation correct? Is my solution the right solution? And is my business model going to work? So that is what your focus needs to be on. So one thing that the author says that really brought this home is that opinions are in the building, but facts are outside. So whatever you sit down and decide in your conference rooms regarding what the customers want, you have no idea what they want. So you have to continuously talk to tens, hundreds, or thousands of customers before you can actually consider releasing the product. Let me apply this to the companies that I have started. When we started Internet Junction, the first company, we started building a browser. We were techno geeks. We thought if we needed a browser, that meant everybody else needed a browser as well. Now, this was a radical idea in 1994. Today, I don't know what we would do without one. But that time, nobody really needed the internet per se. But we felt we needed it, so everybody else as well. It turned out, when we found out that we couldn't really succeed in that market, we had to do something else. But while looking around in our previous jobs, we had figured out that, all this browser thing is great, but nobody has an IP network, or very few people have IP networks. They have novel networks. So we need to come up with something to solve that problem. So that data and some great advice by one of the advisors made us change our focus from building a browser to come up with a solution for the novel network users. And our company was on its way. For Sarvega, we started with the vision of bringing XML routing to the enterprise. It turned out nobody needed it or wanted it. And this was past 2000. So people were not buying stuff because it was cool. And our stuff was cool, but they didn't want to buy it. So after making many rounds of customers, we realized that our IP could be used elsewhere in the same environment. And we came up with a couple of other applications over time, and we were able to get several customer wins until the sale to Intel. My current company's approach has been quite in sync with what this book says. My company has actually two divisions. One is a much larger division which builds products for other companies wherever we have the expertise, and a much smaller division that builds its own IP and builds product that we can sell as products. What we normally do is we figure out routine problems that the bigger division has, and we try to solve them in a scalable way. Then we try to see if there is any customer interest in using that solution in our customer's environment. Not our customers, as new customers' environment. If you can't find any interest, we just chalk it up as an IT project and we move on. We have been doing this for about 3 years, and we have already released 2 products that are both ready for market and have been shipping. So we haven't taken any external funding, and as a result of this, we have had the luxury of kind of building this up slowly, but this has been a great advantage. So to summarize, the 3 breakthrough moments I talked about one was a great team with great synergy and energy. That to me is the most important one. Ideas are a dime a dozen, so you have to focus on execution. And the last one is let your customers decide what they want instead of you deciding what you will provide. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening.